part of the globe, we find people engaged in some form of worship. To adore something other than ourselves seems a part of our very nature. Islam considers this urge to bow before a greater power an essential part of our spirituality. The prayer of a Muslim is meant to develop a deep, personal relationship with God the Creator. This relationship is expected to carry over into all aspects of a Muslim's life. Every area of endeavor, whether done on a personal or collective level, is supposed to reflect the consciousness of God. The uniqueness of this way of life is that it isn't based on a set of dogmas or blind faith. Muslims believe that the proof of God's existence can be found throughout the universe, in human history, and within man himself. In Islam, God, or Allah, is unseen, but the signs of a single supreme being that has no partners are everywhere. Allah is described as the cherisher and sustainer of all that exists. He is most merciful, capable of unlimited compassion and grace. For Muslims, nothing in the universe can be compared to the Almighty. The relationship between the Creator and created in Islam is straightforward. Muslims call upon God directly, at any time, with a firm belief that the All-Knowing is listening and will respond to their prayers. Nowhere is the social and spiritual consciousness of Islam more vividly portrayed than here. This is called a masjid, and is more commonly known to us as a mosque. To our understanding, a mosque would be a combination church, school, town hall, and community center. In Islamic history, vast complexes housing universities, hospitals, and libraries were all linked together with the mosque at the center, a holistic approach to worldly and spiritual affairs. This approach is now being emulated in many mosques throughout North America. Over 1 billion people around the world are Muslims. Islam is at the center of a colossal spectrum of countries, cultures, arts, and languages. But the images most of us see about Islam rarely give us the opportunity to appreciate the many civilizations that fall within its domain. The word Islam has a number of meanings in Arabic: peace, purity, surrender, and obedience. Muslims describe Islam as accepting the supremacy of God's will above our own. A Muslim is anyone who freely makes this conscious commitment to God. Two facts about Islam affect us all. It's by far the world's fastest growing religion, and contributions of Muslims throughout history have had a profound impact on the way we live today. Dr. Abdullah Hakim is a respected scholar of Islam in Canada.
People tend to think that most Muslims are Arabs, but actually the Arabs only make up 15% of the Muslim world. The largest Muslim country is Indonesia. And actually there are more Muslims in Indonesia than the entire Arab world.
When basketball superstar Hakeem Elijah Won wanted to learn more about Islam, he looked past the stereotypes and studied its true teachings. What he found was a new outlook on life and the edge he needed to become one of the game's great players.
In sport, you meet so many different people which will try to intimidate you in so many ways. And I just like to play, and if you try to intimidate me in a way that is not the way the game should not be played, I like to enforce, reestablish my position. So I have a very quick temper. And that's the beautiful thing about Islam, that now you have, patience, you have better understanding, and you avoid things like that. So you play more freely, you enjoy the game more, and you put everything in perspective.
At the heart of Islam is the Koran, which is regarded by Muslims as the last testament, God's final divine revelation to humankind. Every word of the Quran is believed to have been chosen by God and then revealed to the Prophet Muhammad over 1400 years ago. Muslims believe the Quran has remained in its original form, unchanged since the time of its revelation. The Quran regards reason and intelligence as important gifts of God and challenges human beings to use these gifts. Do they not contemplate on the Quran? If it had come from some other source than God, they would have found a great deal of contradiction in it. These are the first verses that were revealed of the Quran. Read, in the name of your Lord who created man from something which clings. Read, and your Lord is most gracious. It is he who taught by the pen, taught man that which he did not know.
Well, this verse is a very significant one in that it actually goes into the depths of human life. It speaks about a fertilized egg, a zygote, which clings from the inside of the uterus. Now, how, 1400 years ago, could a person have known about what goes on inside of the human body? But this is only one of the miracles that we find in the Quran.
The whole natural world in the Quran is called a revelation. Literally, it's a revelation. So scientific pursuit is actually unveiling the meanings of a revelation from God to humankind.
Hamza Yusuf is an American-born teacher and student of Islam.
In the Islamic tradition, knowledge is the birthright of the human being. That every human being is endowed with not only the desire, but the right to seek knowledge.
Pre-Islamically, women, of course, were considered to be subhuman, and not only in pagan pre-Islamic Arabia, but also in prior revelations, women were given a much lesser role than a man. But as we know, God has created man and woman equal. We are equal in the eyes of God in faith and knowledge, and that has been told to us in the Quran by Allah.
Nancy Ali was once a Roman Catholic nun. After coming to Islam, she's played an active role in sharing its teachings with others.
So women still have that freedom to go to the hilts with whatever she wants to pursue in the field of education, as long as it's, of course, a field with dignity, and share her knowledge with the rest of the world, just side by side with a Muslim male.
What I do as train teachers is have them rethink their whole notion of what European history is, and rethink their whole notion of what this European Renaissance was about. That rational thought, whatever the mind can think of intellectually, scientifically, was never seen to be the enemy of Islam.
Audrey Shabazz is the executive director of AWARE, Arab World and Islamic Resources.
We now are learning that Latin Christians in the rest of Europe also sent their sons. We don't have any evidence that they sent their daughters to the great universities in Cordoba, knowing that the first thing that these youngsters would have to do would be to become fluent in Arabic, sort of to take the equivalent of ESL classes, so that then they could take the whole range of academic things that were offered to them in every field. And there were no universities in the rest of Europe at the time.
The great contributions made in areas such as medicine, optics, science, algebra, geometry, there's so much of that, a good deal of which is still forgotten. And even when it's remembered, the tendency is to simply speak of it very briefly and very quickly.
Dr. John Esposito is professor of religion and international affairs at Georgetown University and the author of many books on Islam. He's also the director of the Center for Muslim-Christian Understanding.
Islam's flourishing occurred during the Dark Ages, and then when, as it were, Western culture bounced back, it borrowed and reborrowed from the Muslim world. On the other hand, there's almost a need to forget about that. You know, one doesn't like to feel that one's culture is totally dependent upon the other. And then given the historical confrontations at different times between the Muslim world and the West, there is even less cause to want to see what one borrowed as opposed to seeing the otherness, you know, the tendency to almost want to demonize the other.
Today, Muslims all over North America are building Islamic schools like this one inside a mosque near Toronto. Here, Islam is not presented as a faith, but as a way of life. Rubina Khwaja teaches a grade 1 and 2 class at this full-time Islamic school.
Islam does not teach you to secularize the religion and anything else apart from religion. So they're taught, they're trained from the very young age over here to see Islam as something that is normal for them, something that will be normal when they grow up and have their careers or their jobs or mothers or fathers, whatever they'd be. And what we try to do is we try to establish a relationship of the creator and everything that is created. So when the children learn about the trees and the leaves and the oceans and the ponds or the phases of the moon, whatever it may be, it's part of our curriculum, but we teach it first from the Quran Quran? What does Allah teach us about that in the Quran? And then we learn from there. What we hope that would result from fostering the Islamic spirit and everything they learn is that they grow up to be confident individuals, individuals who can function in society as Muslims and to help the other people in the society. They can see where Islam fits in. Like, it's not something separate, but it's something that's very nice. It's something that's very normal.
Among North America's 5 million plus Muslims are numerous doctors, engineers, scientists, teachers, and other professionals. Their contributions to our society have at times been as impressive as the Sears Tower in Chicago. As leading people in their fields, these Muslims are continuing Islam's civilizational legacy. The foundation of each mosque is the Muslim family. Thousands of families across the United States and Canada, from different nationalities and backgrounds, have come together to help establish their local mosques. It's not uncommon for these same families to assist mosques in other cities once their own is complete. In Islam, great care and attention is paid in keeping family bonds strong and secure. A basic test of Islamic character is how a Muslim treats his or her family members.
Traditionally, the Muslim family has always been the heart of Islamic society. And this is why, for example, in Sharia, in Islamic law, family law is considered the heart of the Sharia.
Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, advised all of his companions that when you're seeking a spouse, the first quality should be piety. You may look for wealth, you may look for beauty. It's not that you can't or you shouldn't, or that it's a natural thing, obviously, but that first quality should be piety. Piety is the foundation of the family. If piety is there, obviously that you build everything on that.
The word for human being in Arabic, the root meaning of it is the one that needs intimacy. That human beings by their nature are creatures of society. We are social creatures. The family is the root of human society in the sense that this is where we get our socialization. This is where we get our humanity.
When the Quran speaks of the beginning of Adam and Eve, it gives us a picture of a man and a woman who both sinned and both asked for forgiveness, and Allah forgave them. It gives us the image of a complementary pair, not that one is supreme over the other or that there is a conflict going on between the genders.
For example, sex within marriage is not only a duty and a right, but it's something that is enjoyable and to be enjoyed. And that one doesn't have to feel guilty about that.
There is no guilt. There's not even a word for guilt in the Arabic language. What Islam does clearly define, though, is the parameters in which intimacy can exist. But in terms of actual acts, these things are seen not only as natural, but they are seen as God-given sources of human pleasure, and that they should not be denied. They should only be contained within healthy parameters.
In whatever occurs in your married life, you'll still have the basis of piety, prayer, God awareness, and piety would be the thing that would keep a couple bound together and away from evil deeds.
In Islam, the male and the female child are equal. In ancient society, especially in Arab society, the position of women had reached such a low level that the man felt he could actually kill his daughter. He could bury her alive. And Islam came and changed that position completely, giving the woman a very high level of esteem, and giving the daughter a very important place in the family.
An enduring stereotype of Islam is its treatment of women. Most of us see Muslim women as victims of oppression. These images are often offensive to Muslims, who point to the sweeping rights given to women over 1,400 years ago during the Prophet Muhammad's time. Women were recognized as full persons under the law. A woman was entitled to the same reward or punishment from God as a man. Women were allowed to own their own property and operate their own businesses. They were given equal pay for doing the same work as a man. They were given the exclusive right to use their money as they pleased. They had the right to vote and keep their own name after marriage. They were given the right to initiate a divorce, and they were given rights of inheritance. Besa Krasnigi is from New Zealand. Her study of Islam has taken her to Jordan, where she and her husband have been translating classical Islamic works into English.
I used to consider Islam like that. From the outside I would say, wow, this is all real oppression for women and what a religion, and I had that was my attitude. But being inside and knowing it from the inside is quite different than being on the outside.
Women started realizing, hey, we're getting the short end of the stick here. What's going on? Why can't I own this? Why can't I do that? Why can't I work? You know, why can't I own a business? Why does he have everything? So, you know, the awareness came into the Western woman, and she, of course, slowly started making a few complaints here and there. And then, of course, everything always does that. You know, it just kind of comes to a boiling point. And then 30 years ago, you have this big outburst of women saying, hey, we're not taking this anymore. We want our rights. The whole idea was the woman had to go to war in this country against men to get what they wanted. Whereas in the Islamic world and with Muslim women, the rights were always there, so there was never a war.
One of the things that gets lost, say, in how the West loves to describe Muslim women as oppressed and downtrodden, is that I don't think that there's genuinely any concern for whether women are oppressed. You have Islam, and then you have what some Muslims do. And usually that comes out of ignorance or out of traditional customs and values that predate the fact that at a certain point they became Muslims, and has nothing to do with Islam.
However, when you have a context where you have ignorance and stereotyping already of a religion and a culture, and you see that religion through the prism of headline events that are explosive, then all things are believable.
I had a woman ask me, say that to me, go back to where you came from. I said, where am I going to go? I came from here. I'm an American. And she just looked at me and she walked away.
I'm very happy to wear the hijab, and I enjoy it very much. And I enjoy the respect with which I'm treated from wearing the hijab. And I would recommend it even to non-Muslim women, and I would recommend that they try it as an experiment.
I've had women ask me questions about it curiously, and I, of course, tried to clear all the misconceptions about it and tell them the advantages of wearing this, that I'm safe anywhere. I can walk anywhere in the city of Chicago. As long as I'm wearing this hijab, no one bothers me. I consider it my coat of armor, actually.
If you see a Muslim man or a Muslim woman dressing modestly, they're giving you a message. They're saying, don't deal with my body, deal with my mind.
One of the most fascinating things about Islam is its sense of a global community, or brotherhood. More than 45 countries in the world have majority Muslim populations. In countries like India and China, Muslims are in a minority, but still number over 100 million. And the number of Muslims is growing at a faster rate than any other community.
Well, Islam distinguishes itself from the great religions of the world. Most of the religions are named after the place or the founder or the people. But Islam is a qualitative term in that it shows that there are people who have certain qualities. It gives you a feeling of the relationship of humanity to the Creator. So Islam actually refers to submission to the Creator, and it is not restricted to any nation, any race, or any people. It is the universal way.
The Prophet Muhammad said, those of you who do not show mercy are not shown mercy. So the Islamic society is one that is expected as an essential element in its humanity to show mercy to others. He allowed people to literally, quite literally, be themselves, but again within guidelines and parameters. So he had this vast array of people around him. He had Arabs, he had non-Arabs, he had blacks, he had light-skinned people. He had blind men.
The major duties of Islam, the belief in one God, the prayer, the fasting, the giving of charity, going to pilgrimage once in a lifetime, all have a similar stream that they are running along it. And that is that they build within people moral character, they unite us with the rest of humanity, and they give us a type of purity that can help us through the trials of life.
Muslims pray in 5 different parts of the day. Each of the 5 daily prayers takes only a few minutes to perform. Praying in congregation is highly recommended and is a must on Friday, the Islamic day of congregation.
Prayer is remembrance of Allah. At this particular time of prayer, you serve Allah. And it's a constant reminder of your duty to Allah. There will be people who understand how important and priority you emphasize on Islam, and your prayer that comes first.
After the recognition of the unity of God, prayer is the most essential pillar in the Islamic teaching. It is the It is the pivotal center of the Muslim society.
I consider it to be the magnetic force in the community, because you see, when Muslims are praying together, they're united. Plus, after the prayer, they're apt to speak to one another. They become aware of each other's needs after the prayer. If someone's having a problem, they'll discuss that problem. They'll strive to help each other. So it's always been a pulling force.
The next most important duty in Islam is called zakat, or the poor due. Muslims donate 2.5% of their excess wealth each year to the needy and less fortunate. The mosque has traditionally been the hub of this charitable activity. The purpose behind zakat is to purify one's wealth, which Muslims believe comes from God.
It provides Muslims with a rationale for social concern, not only a rationale for social concern, but a rationale for why this isn't just something that is sort of voluntary charitable, but rather that it is expected. It's an obligation that one has to pay to God. It's not something that one should just feel, well, I'm choosing to be a good person. It's rather the sense that I belong to this kind of holistic, integrated community, and I have an obligation before God to respond to others within that community.
Well, that's exactly what zakat is. It is saying everybody do their little share, and look at how incredible and synergistic the power of that little share that you are doing when it is compiled with all of these millions of human beings. The World Bank states if 2.5% of the world's grain was put in a repository and then redistributed amongst the poor, there would be no starving people in the world. The Islamic tax of grain is 5%, and 10% if you didn't use irrigation but rain. Just the tax of grain, if that was implemented, we would not have conditions like Somalia, we would not have conditions like Ethiopia, we would not have a situation where 40,000 people die every day of hunger.
The third most important duty for a Muslim is to fast from dawn to dusk during the month of Ramadan, the 9th month of the Islamic calendar.
Again, what they do is reinforce the sense of community experience, because the fast of Ramadan takes place at the same time for all Muslims. And therefore, it's something that worldwide Muslims do.
There are many benefits from fasting. The most obvious benefit is that one literally learns to restrain his passions. Hunger is a source of human passion. If we learn to discipline ourselves in those things, we can discipline ourselves in big things. The idea of as a unifying factor, one, it unifies us with poor people. You can pity a poor person, but you don't empathize with them until you have experienced what they've experienced. So the fasting unifies you with people that are less well off than you are. And that encourages you to want to help those people. And people that look at fasting from the outside often think of it as, why would you want to give up food for that period of time? Fasting is a time in the Muslim world that everybody hates when it ends. So a lot of people don't like it when it begins, but then after a few days, they don't want it to end, because it's such an extraordinary experience, and people can only enjoy that if they've experienced it.
The most awe-inspiring of a Muslim's duties is the Hajj, or pilgrimage to Mecca. Each year, over 2 million Muslims from around the world gather to worship God as a single soul. Here, even arguing in a loud voice is forbidden. It's been called the largest gathering for peace under the sun.
Just seeing people from all over the world, from Africa, Asia, America, England, from all over the world coming together for one purpose. This is to repent and to glorify Allah. And just to see millions of people going towards the same direction. If you're rich, your money cannot really help you. You have to humble yourself. And also it teaches you patience. You see people that sleep very little. They pray almost all night. You tawaf, going around the Kaaba, you see people crying, very emotional. There's no way I can describe it. You just have to experience it. And I was fortunate and blessed to be able to go and experience that.
Pilgrimage time is a time to really both remember and reclaim the great events of Islam, the great founding events of Islam. And the simple fact of it is that the act of pilgrimage, when you have some 2 million people engaging, and it certainly reinforces this sense of people of different color, coming from all kinds of backgrounds, different social classes, and here that underlying unity, let alone the fact that Muslims worldwide are conscious of the pilgrimage at that time and reflect and, as it were, plug into that experience.
It goes hand in hand. Your 5 pillars and the accountability, it has to be together. You can't be just praying and not feeling the responsibility that you have out in the world to your fellow human being, whether he's a Muslim or a non-Muslim. It's built into Islam that one must always remember God, and that, yes, you will be called to account on the Day of Judgment, and your deeds will be put forth in front of you, and you will not be able to speak in behalf of those deeds or defend yourself, that all those things are going to be shown to you like a video camera. So a Muslim will strive all of his life to get in as many good deeds as he can, to avoid anything that might lead him into bad deeds, so that he has a good account to show God on the Day of Judgment.
We are talking about the religion not founded by Muhammad, peace be upon him, but the religion that includes all of the prophets, all of those who taught the belief in one God. And that would include Adam, Noah, Moses, Jesus, Jacob, and all of the prophets, peace be upon them all.
I think that Islam brings to bear, on the one hand, a set of values, many of which are similar to the Judeo-Christian, but I think there are points of emphasis that I think are very important to see in the Islamic tradition and that can contribute.
Well, we know Islam is a solution to all the problems in this country, to the youth, and also to the adult, to the parents. That everybody have they have a role to play. That's the beauty of Islam. Everybody, individual, have their own role to play. The parents have to play their role, so are the children.
If you look at the Muslim world, there are problems. There are many things that are not according to what Islam is really based upon. But the unfortunate reality is we are being stereotyped. The wrong aspects of the Muslim world are being highlighted. And I think it's time for us to really come together and to break down that stereotype and to really look to the depth of what Islam is. I believe if we can focus upon the positive aspects of all societies and look at Islam as a way of life that is growing, that is in all parts of the world, that has a lot to contribute, then we can leave this and say, I'm glad I've met somebody and I've learned something new today.